Is heart rate training the best way to train for HYROX? Honestly, it might be, but there are some things you need to consider before really diving into heart rate training for HYROX. The first thing you need to consider is that your heart rate is not universal. It's going to change depending on the activity that you're doing. So this may sound like common sense, but it's really hard to understand how your heart rate is going to change from running to skiing to pushing the sled to running again. So it's hard to really have one metric that is going to work across all of the different aspects of HYROX training. In general, your heart rate numbers for running will probably be the most important. It's what we're doing the most often in training and during the race. So knowing where your outputs need to be for running is a great place to start. But if you rely specifically on your running numbers, you're not going to get the full story with all of your training. So what I've found is you can take your running numbers and move them around a little bit depending on the modality that you're doing. And here's what I found based off of some different research that I've done, some testing that I've done, and just some anecdotal evidence from training. So for example, if you want to get a zone 2 effort on different machines, you can't just use your running metrics. They won't add up. You'll be working much harder on, say, the bike to get to that zone 2 number that you have in running, and you're really going to be working harder than you need to. So you need to adjust that number. So here's what I found for some of the different elements that you have for HYROX training. For the row, it's about 6 to 8 beats per minute less than your running numbers. So if your zone 2 for running is 130, your zone 2 on the rower is going to be 124 to 122. For the ski, it's about 4 to 6 beats per minute less. The assault bike is closer to 3 to 5. And different metcons will change depending on what you are doing within that specific workout. Generally, there's so many transitions that your heart rate does not stay constantly up. So it's still about 6 to 10 beats per minute less. The reason that your heart rate is going to change based off of the activity that you're doing is because you're in different positions. Say when you're cycling, you're sitting down, your body's going to have an easier time pumping blood throughout your entire head to toe. We're running, we're in a vertical position, you're fighting gravity. It's just going to take more output from your heart to get that blood to where it needs to go. So depending on the position is what's going to change how these numbers work. So the second thing we need to consider is the accuracy of these numbers. Generally, the numbers that we're getting from our external wearable, our watch, are just not accurate. So you need to do some specific testing to make sure you are as dialed in as possible. I've worn a bunch of different watches and they have different methods, and sometimes it just seems like it takes a bunch of different numbers based off of the running that you did and just kind of put something out there for you. And it might be like kind of close, but if we're going to go for this style of training that is based around accuracy and precision, we want to make sure that we're being precise. So you need to do some tests. First thing, before you can do any of these tests, you do need reliable hardware. Pretty much all smartwatches are going to be able to connect to some sort of external heart rate monitor. So I would absolutely recommend you get some sort of chest strap or some armband. Personally, I'm using the HYROX heart rate monitor. I think that's just what it's called. It's the only one that they have, and it is an armband. And I found it to be like really helpful for hybrid training, where the chest strap is a little distracting for me. We're getting on the ground, moving up and down, slides up and down a little bit. I've turned it off during burpees before. So the armband, I highly recommend. It's great. And the one from HYROX is super accurate. I like it a lot. Once you have the hardware, so now you need to do the testing. There's 2 methods that I would recommend for the testing. The first one is actually going to a lab and having someone who is trained to give you these metrics, help you figure out exactly where you need to go. A quick Google search around running lab testing or something like that can show you where these are. And I've found most metro areas will have something like this, and it will cost between $150 and $500, depending on how expansive you want the testing to be. So if you are willing to invest in this, it is worthwhile because your heart rate metrics stay pretty consistent for most of your training life. Things will change depending on age, a couple beats per minute here or there as you get a little bit older. But for the most part, your heart rate doesn't really change based off your fitness. Your running pace will change, but the heart rate will stay pretty much the same. So once you have these metrics, you have them for a long time. So it is a worthwhile investment. If you're more of a DIY kind of person, you just want to do it yourself, you can do your own testing. And the goal here is to put yourself at a max effort and to find how high your heart rate can go. So we're looking for your max heart rate here. Once we have that max heart rate number, we can punch it into some formulas and you'll get your heart rate zones. I recommend doing some kind of a ramp test. So for a ramp test, you'll want to do 10 to 20 minutes of easy aerobic activity. Then you'll want to do increasing effort over the course of 20 to 30 minutes. So I recommend about 5 minutes at kind of marathon effort, 5 minutes at half marathon effort, 5 minutes at about your threshold effort, something you can hold for 10 miles to 15K, and then cutting down to 10K pace, 5K pace, and then keep cutting down each minute to 5 minutes until you can't go any faster, and then go for 1 minute longer. The goal here is not duration, it's not distance, it's just effort, getting your heart rate as high as possible. And this works better than, say, I don't know, an all-out 800 or an all-out mile, because you're not limited as much muscularly and you're spending time in a specific area that you can put out work. So it gives your time to kind of, your heart rate time to build fatigue. So you will get a more accurate representation of what your max heart rate is. Or if you do something that's just like a sprint, you may crap out muscularly before you really can get to your maximum heart rate. The third thing you should consider is which method of heart rate training you want to adopt for HYROX. There are a lot of different ways to go about training for your heart rate. The different zones is what I'm talking about. But for the most part, just pick one and it'll work. It doesn't need to be more complicated than it already is. And I typically work on the 5-zone method, which is just zone 1, nice and easy. That's about 68 to 73% of your max. Zone 2, all day pace, about 73 to 80% of your max. Zone 3 is kind of that gray zone, that moderate to hard zone. Zone 3 is about 80 to 87%. Zone 4, which is your anaerobic threshold, is about 87 to 93% of your heart rate max. And then zone 5, 93 to 100% of your max. So now that we have our zones, what do we do with them? How does it work? How do we put it into practical application for our training? So in general, the goal for HYROX is to be able to go as fast as possible while staying under your anaerobic threshold, getting as close to it as you possibly can without jumping past it. Once you jump past your anaerobic threshold, the fatigue gets exponential. But there's like a sweet zone where you can kind of maintain for up to an hour 10 of high level output. And that's right around the duration of a HYROX, give or take. So we want to spend a lot of time right around that anaerobic threshold, just below it, so that we can increase how fast we're moving without going beyond that anaerobic threshold, which will essentially shut us down quicker than we need. But if you stay right at or right below that number, you can put out a high level of work for about 45 to 75 minutes, which is generally where that HYROX race duration lands. So the more conditioned we can be at that level, the faster we'll be able to go and the longer we'll be able to hold that. So you want to spend time in that zone 4 area in your training. So I think 2 sessions per week when you're really ramping up at this zone 4, with one being up to and probably capped at 70 minutes, and the other one can be somewhere in that 30 to 40 minute range, is a great way to accumulate a lot of time spent in that zone 4. Now, this is going to change depending on where you are in your training. So if you are starting HYROX tomorrow and you want to get this training, doing a 70-minute zone 4 effort is not going to be realistic. So you need to build your way up to that. But 2 sessions per week at this type of level is going to give you a lot of gains. Most of the other sessions, when it comes to your aerobic training, should be in that zone 2 to zone 3. Zone 3 works fairly well for HYROX, especially if we're doing it on machines, because it takes a lot of the impact out of running alone. In the running world, zone 3 they call gray zone. You're not getting that benefit that we talked about with the anaerobic threshold training, and you're taking on a little bit more pounding than you probably should to run that much faster. And it's going to probably set you back a little bit more than it does pushing you forward. But for HYROX and hybrid training, you can do a lot of that work on a bike, on the rower, on the ski erg, and muscularly feel okay. So I would use that as a tool, but I would absolutely give yourself time, 2 to 4 sessions per week of just easy zone 2 work where you're spending time in that zone 2 range, just breathing and just building capacity. In terms of zone 5, like your anaerobic training, I would maybe do that once a week and do it sparingly. If you feel like you need to have that type of push, I'd like to do that maybe once a week and doing it on machines generally or in that Metcon space. It can be helpful for the highest end output and for your power, but it's not incredibly specific for the race itself. So use that sparingly, and once a week I think is plenty. All right, there you have it. That is what I've found to be the things you need to consider if you want to use heart rate training for HYROX. I've been using it for the better part of 18 months now, and I really enjoy it. It's a great metric that I can follow that takes a lot of the blurriness out of training and just makes it concrete and finite. So if you are numbers driven and you do like that kind of feedback, I would highly suggest trying heart rate training for HYROX. But if you're someone who likes to be a little bit more intuitive, who wants to feel things out in their training and doesn't want to be bound by numbers or really take the time to be detailed about it, then I would skip it. And there's not one specific way that's better than the other. You can still get the same type of results through a lot of different styles of training. This is just one way for a certain type of person that can really help wrap their head around what the goal is of each session. So heart rate training isn't for everyone, but it's a good tool for someone who wants to be a little bit more mindful and take a little bit more of a quantified approach to their training. If you are that type of person and you want to use all the details and all the tools to help with your training, you might want to check out this video right here around ski erg training. There's one tool for the ski erg that I think can really help take your efficiency and your power to that next level. So there you have it. Share this with a friend who is getting prepared for HYROX, who might be that numbers driven person, and I'll see you out on the course.